The Peloponnesian War thrust Athens, the jewel of Greek civilization, into a state of relentless hardship. As Sparta and its allies repeatedly laid siege to the city, the people of Athens endured hunger, disease, and overcrowding. While soldiers fought on the front lines, citizens within the city walls faced their own battle for survival, struggling to maintain a sense of normalcy and unity amid the chaos. The siege tested every aspect of Athenian society, its economy, culture, family life, and democratic ideals, revealing both the strengths and vulnerabilities of life within a war-torn city. Part 1. The Long Walls, Athens' Lifeline and Trap. Athens' long walls, the fortified corridors connecting the city to its port at Piraeus, symbolized the city's resilience and strategic prowess. Built after the Persian Wars, the long walls were meant to protect Athens from siege by allowing it access to the sea and thus to crucial supplies. As the Peloponnesian War intensified, the walls provided Athens with a critical lifeline, allowing the city to receive food and resources by sea even as Spartan forces controlled the surrounding countryside. However, these walls also turned the city into a virtual prison. With its lands outside the walls raided and burned by the Spartans, Athens could no longer rely on local farms for food. Instead, it became dependent on grain imports from the Black Sea and allied territories. The long walls confined the population within a limited space, creating a cramped, overcrowded environment as rural Athenians sought refuge within the city. What was once a thriving, open city became a crowded enclave, straining resources and leading to unsanitary living conditions. The people of Athens lived in constant fear of attacks on Piraeus, knowing that if the port were blocked, the city would be cut off from its last remaining supply route. The long walls offered protection, but at a high cost, confining the Athenians in a siege that wore down their spirits and resources with each passing season. Part 2. Overcrowding and the Outbreak of Plague. One of the most devastating consequences of the siege was the outbreak of plague in 430 BCE, which swept through the overcrowded city with relentless fury. With so many people confined within the walls, diseases spread rapidly, and the lack of adequate sanitation only worsened the crisis. The plague killed thousands, including Pericles, Athens' revered leader, and left a significant portion of the population sick or weakened. The effects of the plague were not just physical but psychological. The people of Athens, once confident in their city's strength and prosperity, began to lose hope. The death toll was staggering, and the constant threat of illness created a pervasive sense of fear. Traditional burial practices were abandoned in desperation, as families struggled to care for their sick and dispose of the dead. This disruption of religious customs added to the trauma, as Athenians feared they had lost favor with the gods. The loss of Pericles was especially devastating. As the architect of Athenian democracy and strategy, his death created a power vacuum that led to political instability. Different factions vied for control, often proposing risky or conflicting strategies, further weakening the city's unity. Without Pericles' steady leadership, Athens faced not only external threats but also internal divisions that threatened its resilience. Part 3. Economic strain and scarcity. The siege placed immense strain on Athens' economy. With its agricultural lands beyond the walls rendered useless by Spartan raids, Athens had to rely heavily on imported grain, which became increasingly costly. The city's financial reserves dwindled as it struggled to purchase food and maintain its navy, leaving the treasury stretched to its limits. The scarcity of resources led to rising prices and rationing, creating a stark division between the wealthy and the poor. While affluent Athenians could afford to stockpile supplies, poorer citizens often went hungry. Tensions grew within the city as people scrambled to meet basic needs, and the sense of communal solidarity that had once characterized Athenian life began to erode. To cope with the shortage, Athens imposed strict regulations on food distribution and enforced rationing measures. Markets were closely monitored to prevent price gouging and hoarding, but black market trading and corruption were hard to prevent. For the common citizens of Athens, securing food and daily necessities became a constant struggle, and the sight of empty stalls and barren storage rooms added to the city's sense of despair. Part 4. The Role of Women in a Besieged City. With many men away fighting or fallen to disease, Athenian women found themselves taking on greater responsibilities within the household and the community. Traditionally confined to domestic roles, women now managed family finances, rationed food, and provided care for the sick and wounded. This shift in responsibilities, though temporary, gave women a greater role in ensuring the survival of their families. Women also participated in religious rites and ceremonies, praying for the city's survival and invoking the protection of the gods. Many women took part in the Thesmophoria, a festival dedicated to Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, hoping that their prayers would restore fertility to the land and bring an end to the war. These religious rituals became a source of hope and strength, offering a semblance of control over an otherwise uncontrollable situation. Despite their contributions, the burdens faced by Athenian women were immense. They mourned the loss of husbands, sons, and brothers, bearing the emotional weight of the city's suffering. Plays and literature from the period, such as those by Euripides, depicted women's experiences of loss and resilience, highlighting their crucial yet often overlooked role in a society ravaged by war. Part 5. The persistence of culture and civic life. Even amid siege and hardship, the Athenians sought to maintain their cultural and civic identity. The city's theaters, though limited by resources, continued to stage plays that reflected the fears, hopes, and moral dilemmas of the time. Tragedies and comedies alike became venues for exploring the consequences of war, often questioning the wisdom of leaders and the impact of imperial ambitions on ordinary lives. Playwrights like Aristophanes used comedy to criticize Athenian politics and lampoon the war. His play Lysistrata, in which women of Greece withhold intimacy to force their husbands to negotiate peace, was a sharp satire on the futility of endless conflict. Through such works, Athenians found an outlet for their frustrations and a way to process the ongoing trauma, reinforcing the importance of artistic expression even in times of crisis. In addition, the democratic institutions of Athens continued to function, albeit under strained conditions. The Assembly and Council of 500 met regularly, debating strategies, resource allocation, and diplomatic efforts. While these civic gatherings reflected the resilience of Athenian democracy, they also exposed divisions within the city. Factionalism and competing interests often led to heated debates, revealing the challenges of maintaining unity in a democracy under siege. Part 6. The final stages of desperation and surrender. As the siege dragged on, hope began to wane. The people of Athens grew weary of the constant hunger, fear, and loss. With Sparta's navy, funded by Persia, finally able to challenge Athenian control of the seas, Athens found itself isolated and vulnerable. In 405 BCE, at the Battle of Aegospotami, the Athenian navy was destroyed, cutting off the last lifeline of supplies to the city. Faced with starvation, disease, and the looming threat of a complete Spartan takeover, the city prepared for the worst. In 404 BCE, after months of suffering, Athens surrendered to Sparta, marking the end of the Peloponnesian War. As part of the surrender terms, Athens was forced to dismantle its long walls and surrender its remaining fleet, a humbling end for a city that had once been the heart of Greek power and culture. Part 7. The aftermath and legacy of a siege. The surrender of Athens marked the end of its imperial ambitions, but the legacy of life under siege left a profound impact on its people. The trauma of war and the resilience shown by Athenians during the years of hardship became a part of their collective identity. For a time, the Athenians were humbled, their pride tempered by the reality of their defeat. Yet, in the aftermath, the city retained its cultural vibrancy, continuing to be a center for philosophy, arts, and intellectual inquiry. The experience of life under siege also influenced Athenian thought, politics, and literature. Philosophers like Socrates questioned the wisdom of Athens' imperial ambitions, while historians like Thucydides chronicled the war's events with a critical eye, highlighting the impact of hubris and the cyclical nature of human conflict. The siege became a symbol of the costs of power and the limits of human endurance, a reminder of the resilience that had allowed Athens to withstand years of hardship, even if the final outcome was defeat. Ultimately, the siege of Athens stands as a testament to the strength and spirit of its people. Even as they faced hunger, disease, and the loss of their empire, Athenians continued to uphold their culture, question their values, and seek meaning in the face of overwhelming